This is big business. And in some cases, it's state-sponsored, like North Korea. Remember when they went after Sony, okay? So, like every second, there are millions of attempts to hack U.S. financial institutions, U.S. businesses. In the Pacific Northwest, a couple Christmases ago, Target, Nordstrom's, all of the big department stores got hacked. Target's was the worst because they got not only debit card numbers, but they got PINs as well. Okay, so this is constant. Unfortunately, you just can't go, oh, no problem, I'll just use electronic banking. There's risk everywhere, okay?
Because like I do my banking online, and so do my parents, and we don't write, like no one gets checkbooks, no one gets like receives checks in Australia. Like it's just not a thing.
And once upon a time, I used to think we would get there, that nobody was doing it. I'm actually, at this point, and I could be really wrong, I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see a movement back to paper and away from electronic, because the hacking attempts and the data breaches are getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
So at some point, I think that people may kind of go convenience versus security, okay? So anyway.
I like have no idea where I would send a check or how I'd get a check.
Right, yeah. So and we'll actually be talking about that down the road here. Okay, so again, your credit history is a key thing that the lender's looking at. Because we are a community property state, if you want to borrow, let's say Joe Vandal comes in, and Joe actually has a Mrs. Vandal in his life, and Joe says, yeah, I want to borrow this money, but my wife, I'm just going to do it. Well, bad news for Joe. Being a community property state, he would have to claim all of her debts as well as his own when calculating whether or not he qualifies for the loan. So chances are extremely high he's going to need her income to qualify as well. And even if he doesn't, he needs Mrs. Vandal to know about the loan, because it's a community property state, and if Joe doesn't pay, she's going to have to. Yeah.
So how do they combine that? Like each person has their own credit, but then do they combine it into the average?
They're gonna no, they're not. The worst one wins.
Oh.
Yeah, bad news.
So if you're just like starting your like line of credit and you're just a day late, do you think you'll be more susceptible to that day late fee, like you were saying? Like, let's say someone has been with a certain person for like over 10 years. And, like,
Yeah, I would tell you it depends entirely on the business and their philosophy. There may be companies out there that would cut you a little more slack if you're a long-time customer, but a lot of them won't. It's all automated. It's not really a human being looking and saying, oh, well, this has been a customer forever. So if they don't build it into their software, yeah. Okay. So for this situation, again, this is just seconds to see this information, and I'd get a whole long report of everything that had ever been done. Now let me tell you, for you guys, I hope very sincerely that none of you have a credit history. As a young person, if you do, it's probably bad. Okay? So you guys don't have credit cards. When you're not 18, you can't enter into contracts. So you should not really have a credit history. But if you've bounced checks or debit card transactions, you might have a credit history. If you have unpaid parking tickets, some communities regularly turn those over and it gets on your credit report. In some communities, unpaid library fines will end up on your credit report, okay? And very sad, unfortunately, there are a lot of identity theft victims that are young adults. And so if that has happened, chances are pretty good it's a family member. So you have parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles who have gotten themselves into financial difficulties and they can't get a loan or a credit card themselves, so they borrow a kid's social security and name, just fudge on the date of birth, and apply for credit cards in their name. It is terrible. So I have to tell you that I actually, I am to the point where I'm encouraging people somewhere after you turn 18, before you turn 19, I would check my credit report just to make sure there's nothing out there. Chances are you guys are all just fine, but I know kids that this has happened, okay? And it's a sad but growing trend. And the people that do this, I'm sure in their heart of hearts, they have absolutely no doubt that they will pay those bills and take care of it, and it'll never be a problem for you. But if they didn't pay their bills for themselves in the first place and now they're in trouble, chances are they might be in trouble. They're just rolling the problem onto you. So I hate to say that, but I would encourage you once a year to check your credit report once you turn 18. Okay? You can do it for free. It's a good idea. All right, so again, we talked about community property. We talked about what we can see on your credit report. Now let's talk about a 5. When you get to that point where you're more than 90 days late, the lender is probably working under the assumption you're never going to pay it off. And they're going to start contacting a lawyer or a credit agency to come after you. And so that's when you get a 5. They've essentially given up on you and written you off. Okay, so they're afraid they're never going to get that money. A 9 means you've declared bankruptcy. A 6, a 7, or an 8 is something you hardly ever see. They're typically comments from consumers, or sometimes they're comments from institutions. U of I had a huge data breach back in the day, and I think it was a case of a computer being stolen. And they somehow didn't get my husband, but they got 2 of my kids and my data. So we're talking social security numbers, date of birth, the whole 9 yards, right? Nothing ever came of that, but U of I did reach out to credit reporting agencies and let them know, so that if something weird showed up on an account, there was at least a comment to document this had happened. Same thing happened for my husband's professional association he belongs to, AICPA. They had a laptop that was stolen with every member's information on it, and they actually paid for their members to get a credit report every month for a couple of years because they knew they'd really messed up. Okay, so it's something you just have to be aware of. Identity theft is an issue, and you want to kind of protect yourself there. Okay, now we're on to page 2. I want to talk about bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a legal process that a family or a person might go through. Yes, sir.
I don't know, did we get this PowerPoint yesterday?
Yeah.
Did I not hand it to you?
No.
Thank you for asking about that.
I was thinking, it's a little weird that she's not giving it to us at the beginning, but maybe she'll send it to us as.
I thought you were saying more stuff before we started the PowerPoint, like a normal lecture before the PowerPoint.
Well, you guys are so shy.
Well, it's also, this is like actually for the
It's so bad with that. I just lost those.
That is funny. They all say, didn't want to interrupt.
Basically.
They're very nice people, but
High School Musical. And it's those two, when they're on the stage, and it's basically, where it's basically like, now it's time for.
okay. So now we're on page 2, all of us together. So bankruptcy is a legal proceeding. When, yes, sir.
We need one more.
When a person or a business or a family gets to the point, we need one for Riley too. Okay. It's okay, I've got one. When we get to the point where something has happened and they don't have an income that will ever allow them to pay their bills in full, they may go to court and seek bankruptcy. There are some big problems with doing that. Number 1, you do not get out from paying your student loans. Even in bankruptcy, you still have to pay your student loans, okay? Number 2, lenders do not look kindly upon people who have declared bankruptcy. It probably means you will never be able to get a business loan or a mortgage to buy a house. It's really tough. You would have to have other people willing to sign on the line and guarantee your loan, and that may not be something that you could ever manage, okay? So, it's a big deal. Most people in our country that have declared bankruptcy have done it because they had a family member who did not have insurance and they had a catastrophic health event. So I have friends that before healthcare reform passed, they adopted. And before healthcare reform, there were waiting periods with many insurance policies, so that if you were a new employee, you might have to wait 6 months or a year, or if you adopted a child, you might have to wait a period of time. Well, when they adopted a little girl from China, and she was 3 months old when they adopted her. Unfortunately, by her 6th-month birthday, she'd been diagnosed with a very serious form of cancer. And she spent about a year receiving treatment in the hospital in Seattle. Her parents were both professors at Wazoo, and fortunately, the community really, really rallied around them. But that said, by the time that year was over, they had about $1 million in medical bills, because literally this little girl lived in the hospital for just about a year. So she survived, but it just financially ruined the family. You're not going to dig your way out from under something like that. So they had no choice but to declare bankruptcy. Okay? So they went to court, they shared every last bit of financial information with the judge, and the judge then makes some decisions and will tell certain companies, you're going to get maybe 20 cents for every dollar they owe you. They may tell other companies, you're not getting anything. Okay? So that's why lenders are so opposed to bankruptcy. Unfortunately, credit card companies have lobbyists galore. And they were able to lobby Congress and get Congress to make it even tougher to declare bankruptcy after the onset of the Great Recession in 2008. So it's not easy to declare